Jason was distraught. He was a colleague and was calling to vent. Now, Jason and I had collaborated years before when he was a senior executive at one of our suppliers. We continued to stay in touch. I was perfect for two top positions, Phil. One as a CEO with a PE-sponsored company, and the other as president with a family office owner. I thought the interviews went great. How in the world did I miss out on both? I asked him to walk me through his preparation. He was definitely focused on his qualifications throughout the interviews. The more I listened, the more it was clear. He was not seeing the PE and family office perspectives. And if you ever interview for a family-owned company, the ownership perspectives can be even more distinct. Working with differing ownership structures requires understanding of where the owners are coming from. Hi, I'm Phil Coerper, Managing Director of Ringling Business Solutions. The title of this episode of the CEO's Field Manual is Winning as a Hired Gun Under PE, Family Office, and Family Ownership. This is part one of a three-part series covering working under these ownership structures. Over the course of a 25-year career as CEO, I've had the opportunity to work with all three of these key business ownership structures. While each situation has important and unique characteristics, there are also some common themes here that you, as the CEO, can use to navigate and succeed in each. My leadership roles at these firms were typically as a hired executive to move the company faster towards desired goals, obviously because they are not achieving the results they desired. A good friend of mine called my career that of a hired gun. Now, I never really loved the term, but also never found a better description of these assignments in my professional path. When hired for these roles, we take on a high level of accountability and authority. In a future episode, I'll dive into the importance of having authority levels aligned with accountability levels. Now, in any role, these should align. As a hired gun, this is a key topic. Unless you and the owner's plan is to ultimately have you completely own the company, there often is a shelf life in these roles, even when you do a great job. Embracing this fact helps keep your focus on the business and also prepare the firm for the time when you are likely to move on. The companies I led were typically mid-market in size and international in market scope. In every case, I was tasked to take the firm from point A to point B. What those goals are, again, varies for each situation, but every time they're best understood through the lens of the ownership structure and what the owners are trying to accomplish on their level. In these episodes, I'll cover each ownership type and some ground rules that I learned working within them. Let's start with private equity. As a hired CEO, I found working with private equity ownership to be very straightforward and rewarding, but always high pressure, and sometimes that pressure was brutal. I was fortunate to work for PE firms that were transparent and very professional, but I have colleagues that have different experiences. So one piece of advice is to make sure you do deep research of the PE firm before signing up. Now, it's not that difficult. You can find companies they own, see how they've done. You can contact past CEOs of those companies. They'll tell you their perspective of the lay of the land. Common attributes of the PE-sponsored companies that I ran included high leverage on the business, a known target for exit, and several active PE board members who were assigned to be my advisor and be close to the operations. Now, this last one is critical and interesting. PE firms vary on how hands-on or how hands-off they may be with their CEOs. Now, your instincts may say, hey, you hired me to run the company, let me do my thing, and I'll let you know if I need any help. I happen to think the opposite. Let me share how I got there. I was coming off a stint as president of a family-owned business. The owner, Brian, was extremely hands-off. Brian wanted me to run the business and come to him just for communication and support. Brian was so delegating that I ended up scheduling a monthly round of golf with him just so I felt connected and that I felt transparent in my activities. I love the autonomy that Brian gave me, but it also provided a lesson. As the business leader, it's up to you to assure you are connected with your owner. Even a hands-off one, you got to make sure that you're aligned as you move forward. So following this assignment, I'm interviewing for a PE-sponsored company, and it was immediately clear they had a much more hands-on approach. In the interview process, everybody was there. Alan and Bruce, the principals of the PE firm, Frank, the chairman of the board for the sponsored company, and two gentlemen, William and Stephen, two young, very smart support professionals. William was expert in accounting, Stephen expert in operations. Now, these guys knew the details of the business and were obviously opinionated on what we needed to do to win and move forward. I got hired and went to work. From day one, I consistently had support on the ground at the company. Now, I frankly thought it was too much, especially following years of being pretty much left alone. It was not always comfortable and sometimes outright distracting. It definitely took some adjustment. Then one day, I'm walking through the plant and I see Stephen and Bill standing near a production line having a conversation. They call me over and relate an issue impacting production efficiency and driving inventory variances. I had not heard of this issue up until that point. Then it really clicked with me. These guys were super talented and they were working their butts off trying to help improve the business. Also, they were good at deference to me as the CEO when it was called for. We developed mutual respect and I turned into a fan. From then on in my career, I fully welcomed as much support as I could get. The other outcome with active board members is by developing a close relationship with them, you not only gain great advice and a sounding board, but you stay connected to avoid surprises in the boardroom. This is also super valuable. Back to PE, the amount of debt and leverage is also a key factor in how you approach running the business. The PE model often dictates the company is purchased through high amounts of bank and potentially secondary debt. It drives a ton of upside because when the cash from the company pays down the debt, every dollar paid turns right away into equity for the owners. I recall a specific board call I was on when a key market sector was seeing a structural downturn. My modeling showed we would blow through a bank covenant quickly, even if we lost a small percentage of these key sales. In a less leveraged firm, this would have been probably a blip. In this case, it quickly turned into a major problem. This dynamic creates a relentless focus on growth, cost management, and cash management. If you're going to be a CEO at a PE structured firm, you need to be great at all of these. Next, the PE structures I worked in all had strong M&A mindset. Finding accretive bolt-ons was a huge upside. In this case, Alan, one of the principals at the PE sponsored, was expert at M&A. Alan and I invested a ton of time in our relationship, and that really paid off when we found a great bolt-on acquisition for the firm. So chops in M&A is critical. And again, relationships with your owners is core to your job. Finally, always be preparing for exit. Exit is when the PE fund gets paid. Up until that point, the firm is taking on management fees, but the actual investors, typically institutional funds, get their payday at exit. There are various financial goals that drive exit, but a key item to remember is the time factor. The PE firms I worked with used internal rate of return as a key metric. That calculation is time sensitive. So hitting key targets, let's say in 4 years, gains much higher returns than hitting the same targets in 6. There also may be pressure you don't see related to other companies the PE firm sponsors that can impact your goals and exit strategies. One more thought on exit. Exit requires a story. It's not enough to show trailing financial progress. There needs to be a strong story to attract the next buyer. At exit, you're likely going to be the one who tells that story. Build it, refine it, perfect it. You also need to decide if you are participating in the next round with the new owners, if you're asked. This is also a topic in itself. So going back to Jason in his interviews, Jason missed looking for prompts in these areas. They'll be probed for sure. His preparation did not show understanding of the PE or the family office perspectives, or showcase his expertise in these critical areas of the business models. If you do not have direct experience in an area, own that too. Let's say you, like Jason, have not fully participated in a PE exit. This can be a real deal breaker to be hired. Hearing how Jason responded to this question, he may have come off a bit defensive. Own the answer, but also think of experiences you have that relate to, in this case, the exit process. Also, do deep research into areas where you may be light on experience. In this example, knowing the exit process fully may have been enough to keep Jason in the running, even against more experienced executives if they liked them for other reasons. Further, PE sponsors are famously smart, focused, and hate to waste time. Keep your exchanges tight and focused, both before and after you're hired. So here are a few takeaways. First, research the PE firms you may be joining. Who are they? How do they operate? What's their reputation? And be sure accountability aligns with authority. A gap here is a red flag. Secondly, embrace active board members. Welcome as much help from talented folks you can get, and invest in these key relationships. Third, winning requires a relentless focus on growth, cost management, and cash management. Now, these are always important for any business, but they're crucial in the PE model. And fourth, always be preparing for exit. And remember, exit requires a story that you will have to tell. Build it, refine it, perfect it. And this is not done overnight. I hope this gives you some meaningful insights. Tune in to part 2, where we delve into family office structures and how they compare and differ with PE ownership. Thanks for joining this episode of the CEO's Field Manual. We'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody. Please subscribe, and we'll see you at a future video.